I'm Kate Bowen. I'm from southern Vermont, just kind of about 2 hours north of Boston in the corner of New Hampshire and Massachusetts. And my husband, Mark, who's here, is currently in the Vermont Army National Guard. And before I met him and before we had a full farm, he was on active duty with the Army as well. And as we were preparing for a deployment, I started to try to be proactive and wanted to have all my, ducks in a row for all the stuff before he left. And while there was a lot of information and support around things with parenting and having your kids adjust to holidays without dad around and that kind of thing, there was nothing at all to do with getting your farm ready. And really nothing to do with agriculture at all. And so I tried to reach out and be proactive. In our state, being a National Guard family is a little bit isolating. We're the only family in our community that's serving. There's not a lot of resources. Everything's pretty geographically spread out. Not quite like Texas, but where we are, it's mountainous. And so I've tried over the years since Mark has been back to be active and to try to help out with our family readiness groups and take online trainings whenever possible. And I've done a little bit less of that in the last few years, just as we've gotten busier on the farm. But I've still tried to know that when a deployment comes around, I'm going to need probably some support because none of my friends have ever experienced this, and I just know that it would be really handy if I had some resources and even just people to call when things get really tough. So I was kind of blown away that there was no support, especially I figured there was going to be something from more, Midwestern ag states or something like that, but there wasn't. So I wanted to just reach out to Michael O'Gorman and ask him if he had anything available or knew of, some wife he could put me in contact with who had gone through multiple deployments. And he said, well, why don't you present at the conference? So that's how this all came about. So you're literally part of something today that has not really ever been formalized in the United States. And it's going to be us, introducing ourselves, sharing our stories. Please share your experiences, your questions. I think it's just kind of a reminder that preparation and discussions are really important with your partner, spouse, or business partners. And even if all we do today is just sort of, light a fuse where you go home and might consider some of these things, I think it could be incredibly valuable. So without further ado, we'll do our introductions. And we don't have a great sound system right now, so you'll have to bear with me. Oops. Do you want to just jump into that? It didn't go to the bios. Let me go.
Yeah, you can go to do bios at the end.
What do you think? Is your video on here?
Yeah, it's after this.
Oh, it's okay. It's after this.
I mean, we can walk through this, and then that'll raise questions. And then as we do our bios, it
Sure.
still gives questions.
All right. So one thing that we discussed as we were preparing this is that this is a very unique, specific thing, depending on your length of deployment, what the communication is going to be like with your partner when they're away, and then also just the specifics of your own farm. So there's not a great, with a business plan, someone can lay out the 12 steps that you need in order to do that. With this, it's a little bit different, just because if you have a, 10,000 acre soybean operation, it's going to be really different than someone who's homesteading. But one of the bonuses with however you do this is that it can also be crossover for natural disasters. So like the stuff we've seen in California lately with wildfires, it's good stuff to be prepared for in case you have to do an evacuation on your farm. So you want to say hi, Isa?
Yeah, I'll pass the mic over here.
Hi, so I'm Isa Marie McIntyre. So my husband's a beekeeper in California, talking about the wildfires. There are a lot of wildfires over there currently. He runs an operation of about 800 hives right now. He started with like 100 hives, and he just has been growing in the past 4 years. And my husband is a disabled veteran. You guys have already probably seen this video that I'm about to show at one of the previous sessions, but it gives a little information about him and his operations, and actually how FVC has been a huge part of our development and our growth. But he got injured in Afghanistan, and so a huge role that I play is in the beekeeping business with him is really keeping a good eye on him and making sure that he's not getting burnt out. Because as I'm sure most of you, if not all of you know, farming is hard work, laborious, physically, and it could be mentally challenging as well. And so with his disabilities that he has from coming back from war, I play a part in trying to keep everything sane and everything as sane as possible in our house with our 3 children and our bee business. So I guess we'll pass it back to you. We don't have audio for the video, so we're into that. Oops.
For Alex Harrigy, the journey began 5 years ago in Afghanistan.
We found two IEDs. My team leader called me and said that they found a 3rd device, and so we're walking to the 3rd device when I stepped on the 4th device.
Alex nearly died from the explosion, but through grit, determination, and 2 new metal legs, he found himself working again and at peace with the honeybees in Woodland. The buzzing of thousands of honeybees is actually calming for Alex because his bees are pollinating the almond trees and helping to grow food for farmers. Did you ever imagine that one day you would be here, standing in a beehive with a self-sustaining business?
Never would have imagined I would have been a beekeeper.
With more than 600 hives, these honeybees are a sweet business for Alex, but he wouldn't be here today if not for the Farmer Veteran Coalition.
Our mission is mobilizing veterans to feed America.
Michael O'Gorman is a lifelong farmer dedicated to helping men and women in the military find careers in agriculture, and he knew Alex needed something special.
Alex told me he needed something to safely move the bees, and he runs a pollination company. And so we found what he needed.
It's called the Hummer Bee, a forklift that provides machine muscle that's perfect for Alex.
And then this clamp right here, specifically, it's meant to hold 2 different pallets. So in total, you're holding 8 different hives.
But the forklift cost $30,000, so the Farmer Veteran Coalition teamed up with 2 other nonprofits to purchase Alex's ride and mobility that gives Alex a new mission in life.
It's about having a purpose, for sure. Feeling that you're giving in a way or contributing to society in a way.
And now the bees are finding a new pathway for Alex Harrigy. In Woodland, Mike Lurie, KCRA 3 News.
So I just threw some pictures of our family up here. I actually served in the Army for 8 years myself. My husband did 11 years, almost 12. And we actually met in Iraq. We met on deployment to Iraq. And then these are our children right here, our 3 little monsters. But as you guys know, farming is really a family operation. I mean, it really has been. And then another thing with my husband's injuries is that my oldest son especially has kind of taken on a caregiver role as well. So with farming and also just at home in general. So hopefully I can provide some good insight as to how I help him and how really our bee business is a family business, not just his. That's it.
Do I need this, or can you hear me? Like, it's not recorded, correct? Okay. Can you hear me? It is recorded? I hate these things. Is this okay? I'm an Army spouse, so I definitely can project all the way to the back of the room. So Barrera's Family Farm, my husband and I co-own it. This is our brood of children. And we all teamwork at work together. My husband has been on deployments, will be at 20 years serving, well, married to it, but 20 years next month. And this is one of the pictures. He never took many while he was deployed, but right now he's not deployed, not getting ready to deployed. Hopefully we're putting in our paperwork soon, possibly. But I was going through all the different places that we've been, all the deployments we've been on, and it wasn't so much the deployments. We were with the 101st for 5 years, and the missions after at other installations, but all the places we've been, he's just been gone all the time. And so I was going through the list. So this next 2 years, we live in Nebraska. He lives in Kansas. This next 2 years, we will be 730 days. We will get to see him a total of 104 out of the 730. But that's not unusual. I was going through the list of all the places we've been stationed, all his missions he's been on, and when we were at Fort Irwin, we got to see him for a total of the 3 years. We got to see him 144 days of 1,095. So that's pretty standard for us. So we're always thinking everything that we're doing is kind of deployment ready, because our lifestyle, even though it's not technically a deployment, it is, I need to have everything squared away. When it comes to farming, and we started our farm 5 years ago, he's the hay guy. It was so frustrating when I needed hay, and I didn't have the contact information for that, and I needed it ASAP, and I didn't know where to get it. And I hate scrambling on Craigslist, getting a crappy deal, getting a crappy quality. So I was like, just get me the hay guy's number. So then we went through and we got all that squared away. When my son, my 12-year-old, rolled the tractor, it was determining how much information do you share with the husband and how much do you not. So especially when he's got anxiety with PTSD issues and whatnot, but then there's an extra anxiety because he's not there to protect his family. And so all that FRG training came in, and what do you actually share? So great pictures to share later, down the road after he comes home and sees you're okay. So it's really a team effort. Everything we do with our family is teaching the community. Everything we do is the 7 Army values, and I am Army wife all the way. And so I'm the Rear D commander, the first sergeant, and I run it, but all of our kids are incorporated into everything that we do, and they really help. The teenagers have no choice. They teach all my classes and the agritourism we do. And everything that we do with all of our kids and our community is instilling all of the values. And so I think that really helps the piece together, and my husband can kind of rest in the security that while he's gone, the farm's still operating, and there's better communication. So yeah, I just threw a bunch of pictures in there, but that's us. So I think that's it. And then I put my contact information, because I hate when there's a speaker and you're like, really want to contact them later with something? So that's there if you wanted it.
Another way that you can contact our speakers is on the app. If y'all want to look on the app, you can message them directly. Throw that in there. App plug.
Hello, I'm Matt Shar, owner-operator of EDS Ranch. I'll tell you a little bit about how I got in this position, because I knew I would be an oddity for this breakout session. This summer, I was contacted by the Farm Vet Co. for a field day at Rodale Institute, which I followed pretty heavily, and I was very excited to go over there. As we were on station at Rodale, the veteran coordinator for Rodale said that Michael Gorman was going to be there, and I got really excited. I didn't get a chance to talk to him a whole lot at last year's conference, so I made sure I got in front of him to tell him my story. One thing led to another. I started, forgetting what was going on. We're having good conversation. He wants me to be a speaker. I'm saying, okay, yeah, that's great. And then I started reflecting back, like, what am I even speaking about here? Oh, it's holding down the homestead. And that was a really big shock, because I was always the deployer. I was always doing it. I was the one gone all the time and just kind of checking in with the home station. Hey, what's going on back there? And it's kind of when my world started coming down on me that, oh man, like my wife is getting ready to go, and now it's me and a 4-year-old girl and a 7-year-old son and a full-time farm operation now. So it really put me into planning and preparation mode and honestly freak out mode. Like, how's this going to go? Who knows? So I was career Army. I had no intentions of ever getting out of the Army. I wanted to stay for my 20 years and beyond. I started out in the 82nd Airborne. I was airborne infantry for 4 years and did three deployments to Iraq, totaling 24 months in total on that. Came back and I decided I wanted to do even harder stuff, so I went to Special Forces selection, and I got 3rd Group. So we spent our whole time at Fort Bragg, which is not desirable, but we had a good time. And once I got into SF, it was just as busy, if not more. I was doing more training where I would leave on a TDY trip for out-of-state training, overseas training, joint training operations, and my wife was the rock holding down the house. At the time, we had some backyard chickens in the garden. It wasn't as extreme as we've gotten at this point, but it was never really, none of this was ever on my radar. Like, well, what's going on back there? Is she okay? How's everything going? Because I was focused on myself and making sure I was able to come back. As we started having children, my eyes started getting opened up, because it was no longer her just doing her thing, having fun with deployment money, taking care of the house, doing college. Now she had some serious issues going on with, I'm 500 miles away from our home. I don't have a support system other than a bunch of other Army wives that are dealing with the same exact thing. So you need a shoulder to cry on, but they're dealing with it too. And that really started hitting me, and the possibility of me never coming home was really starting to weigh. Like, wow, can I do another 6 years of this lifestyle? Because everyone here has dealt with that lifestyle where it's just common. Now that we're back in our home state of Ohio, we meet people all the time that's been married for 10 years and they have never spent one day away from their spouse. We're like, whoa, we started looking forward to deployments. Like, hey, when are you deploying again? It's about time for a break from you. You're a handful. So in 2016, I was in Africa, and our camp was attacked, and I was hit with mortar shrapnel. This is my 2nd Purple Heart, unfortunately. And this time was a little more serious, and it was a little more serious mentally, because we were really, Afghanistan, the network for handling injured personnel is a little bit different. Within an hour, you're in a hospital. This was more of a 5-hour deal to get an airplane there. So I really I didn't end up medevacing. I just stayed there. But we had a guy that had to go, and it took a long time to get him out of there. And I started thinking, well, what if I didn't get hit in the butt, in the leg, and it was in my back, and I had a sucking chest wound. I really started to get into my head, like, I might not have came back from this, and we're in the middle of Somalia, and no one even knows we're here, and no one even knows, what are we doing here? I still really started just having anxiety about, whoa, okay, what's really important here? My family is number one. That's what's important. So as I went through surgery to have some reconstruction done on my hip, they gave me the option to take a desk job or to separate the military through medical retirement. So I decided I would choose that and move into farming. So what did that mean for me? My wife moved home as I started the med board process, and she kind of got established with her job. And as I transitioned out, I came on and scaled up the farm that was already in its infancy. And all of a sudden I started realizing, well, I am the caregiver for these children. And I laugh about it. I say I was always, my wife is this is my wife, Charlotte. She is the caregiver. I am the caretaker. I take all the care that she'll give me, and I take advantage of it anytime that I can. All of a sudden I realized that I am in charge of these children, and I'm the one nurturing them, and she's at her job, and she has important meetings, and she has things she can't miss. And it was really started to be a struggle for me. Like, wow, I'm doing the farm, and that's really great. But like, she's the one doing the thing now, and she's still in the Army Reserves, and she goes away for training. And I was on Veterans Day, I did a speaking engagement. She was in California for 2 weeks, and I said, I will go back to Afghanistan on the first thing smoking, rather than stay alone with my kids for just 2 weeks. And I'm looking at 6 months here coming up. So that was a nice little pre-mission train up. But I'm really honored to be here for this breakout session. My biggest thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was your preparedness and the ability to scale your operation, especially as a spouse. I get so motivated coming to these. I want to go home and not stop working until I can be up on the big stage talking about these awesome things I'm doing for my farm, for my fellow veterans. But I need to also be a realist that, hey, this operation could potentially need to scale down because she will be gone during summer, my busy season, and that's the reality that I'm facing. And I think that's something to consider if you are the spouse at home holding down the farm or the homestead. Your support network is going to be pretty serious, and you need to be realistic about what you can handle, what you can take on, what you can manage for your own mental health, the safety of your children. Yeah, my children will be fine, but if I have to go, if you got to do what you got to do, they're tagging along on the backhoe or the tractor. Those are some real considerations on how you're going to deal with your upcoming deployment. And some of the things we're projecting stock density for our poultry operation. We're talking about potentially bringing on additional interns, which is great because I'm reaching out to other veterans that I know that are interested, saying, hey, my wife's deploying. I'm looking for someone to help me out with the poultry operation, with the pig operation. So expanding your network of support is number one, especially if you're away from a military installation where you are an oddity and people don't even understand. So you get a chance to really tell your story and kind of explain the military lifestyle to people who have no exposure. I think that's about it for me.
Can you tell us about your operation, like a 60-second?
Oh, yeah. What don't we do? We don't do cattle yet. That's about it. We started with some pigs. We do heritage breed pastured pork. I have 6 sows, 1 boar, up to 20 to 30 piglets at a time. I usually sell about half of those and finish half of those. So in preparation for this, I had 30 piglets in September. I sold 25, and I'm scaling down my pork operation because it's labor intensive, and I know that when I'd be getting close to finishing these out, I'll be halfway through her being gone, and I don't want to deal with that. So that's one example of the scalability that I recommend in a small scale operation. We also do pasture poultry, so broilers. We do about 2,000 a year direct marketing, and we're in with a couple restaurants. Egg laying operation where it's just direct. This is farm life. Since I've been here, I've gotten more calls for eggs than I've ever gotten from anyone. I wasn't even out of bed, and I had people hitting me up for eggs for Thanksgiving. We have beehives. We have about 20 beehives, nothing like in the hundreds. That's a goal. We have a permaculture orchard, food forest in its 3rd year, infancy, and anything else I can do to make side cash, I'll do it. Oh yeah, value adds. Yeah, we render our lard from our butchered pigs, and we make lard soap and wax candles from the bees, chapstick, anything that we can take and squeeze another dollar out of our projects. That's I'm a tinkerer by trade, so anything I can do to move a little farther down the line, I try and do it.
Awesome. So as I was trying to figure out how we could take something so vast and huge and specific to your own operation and deployment, and break it down though so that it would work for a lot of people, divided it into 4 categories. So like anyone deploying and having family at home, you're going to have your homestead dwelling. So that's like your house, and that part, you can usually find a fair amount of support with your local FRG or military one source. That's, pretty straightforward. I think the family personal part is your children, anyone that you need to take care of, as probably, Marielle can touch to a little bit, is you need to be authorized to do medical care for your children, that kind of thing. Things that you often might overlook could become an issue. And then specifically for us farmers is the land, the animals, and then your farm business. So your business plan that might work might be your dream. When a deployment comes along, things may drastically change. So for the homestead part, just quickly, one issue that came up, I think the first AT we ever had, was that we had DirecTV and something happened to it and I wasn't authorized on our account, and the lady wouldn't talk to me without my husband's social security number and some other kind of magic number, and he was away, and so we had no TV for a while. A minor thing, but it was really annoying, and it got me thinking that what else do I not have access to that you would think as an adult woman I would have access to? So for us, one thing that was also an issue is that our business credit card, I didn't have one. So when I go to the grain store, it's not a big deal. I just grab my husband's and, we slide it there. But I can't sign business checks. I can't, I need my own access to our financial stuff. That's vitally important, and just a basic. And, with the house, luckily we have a 14-year-old who's very mechanically inclined, and so he can usually figure out electrical and plumbing things. But when I blow a circuit in the barn and the freezers are all off and I have bacon melting, that's a crisis. And that's one of those things that I hate to bother my husband with when he's away. I still bother him, and luckily he's usually had access to his text. But I don't want to do that when he's in a combat situation, as other things weighing on him. So for us, we have a small family, unlike some of these folks over here have heard. So our labor is very scarce and precious. We also deal with a lot of chronic illness things, so our health is quite unreliable. So planning ahead for our farm chores, and this works also and is a good thing for every farmer veteran to do as well, because people throw out their backs. There's tractor injuries. We've had one where out of the blue, my husband was unable to do anything on the farm for 3 months. That kind of emergencies happen quickly, and not that you want to dwell on that or go down the depressing, anxiety-ridden tunnel that those can be. I think it is worth to have a conversation about that and know, is there a neighbor that knows how to operate a tractor that can put in a round bale? And then, of course, all of the things with wills and all of that stuff that you guys deal with generally with, company commanders and all different military things, having all that stuff put in order so you don't have to deal with that, because, God forbid something happens. It doesn't really, I'll have to still be a soldier and warrior at home, because no matter what call I get, I'm still going to have cows and pigs and chickens to feed. So I have to be able to, hold my crap together enough no matter what happens or what I hear. And it's important to possibly have someone who, with one phone call, can show up and help you. And then also for me, as we've planned for deployment, I'm definitely a very stubborn Scotch-Irish girl who wants to prove to the world that I can do everything while my husband's away, and look at me go. And I think that's an incredibly toxic mindset for my own self-care and self-preservation. And so as much as I would love to keep everything going and growing while he's away, I think that that's probably a terrible idea. So for our production and land animals, I think just some basic things that could be really handy is, and it, this takes a little bit of time, but I think all of this stuff you could do within 2 hours, and it could be life-changing for a deployment or just for a health emergency, or somebody gets the flu and is out for a week. But having your chores broken down and post those instructions. So we've done that just on it's really official, on a scrap of wood in our chicken coop, just knowing AM chores, here's what you got to do. PM chores, here's what you've got to do. So if an intern or someone else who's filling in, like my mom, has to do it, I don't have to explain it, and that's something that can take some pressure off. It's also really important for people to know your expectations so you're not disappointed. I mean, whoever you have doing chores, filling in, an intern is going to do it different and probably not the way you want it done, but at least they know they need to water the chickens. The other things to be aware of are different sort of certification and requirements. So depending on if you're USDA organic, whatever your state programs, some of those things are going to possibly need recertification while your spouse or partner is away. And those are things that you need to be fluent in. Obviously, all of the equipment stuff, I highly recommend, and in a lot of states, and it's stereotypical, but when we think about like a spouse, like wife at home, there are women-specific tractor safety courses that I highly recommend. I am not good with equipment or mechanically inclined at all, and I found those classes incredibly helpful and valuable because I could ask my stupid questions and there was still another person asking an even dumber question in the room. So it made me feel better. And for me personally, while my husband's away, things just I need to have a mechanic kind of on call because different things are going to break, different things are still going to need to be serviced over a 12-month period of time. That needs to be figured out and laid out. And then as far as livestock and poultry, so our farm, we raise meat, eggs, hay, maple sap, and forest products. So our livestock part and poultry part is really diverse in the whole food group. So we do turkeys, chickens, pigs, cattle, the whole gamut. And certain things are going to be okay. I can load chickens into the truck. I can do all that. Cattle, I cannot take them to the slaughterhouse on my own safely. We just don't have the loading facility. So those kind of very basic technical things I think are super important. And your access to a vet care. Some of us are from really rural areas where in our whole half of our state, we only have one bovine vet. If they're not available to come for an emergency and a cow needs to be put down, can I do that safely? And then for the veggie producers and orchard folks, this is a little bit different if you already have a lot of employees. If you run an orchard and you have 30 employees, it's a little bit different than our specific operation. But I know for me, our garden stuff is going to stay the same through a deployment. Our haying is going to change dramatically because Mark really heads that up and I can't safely do that. Our son is this is his first year really running equipment safely and getting all the safety certification for that in our state. So haying is going to be something that drops off, which then impacts all of the relationships we have with landowners. So in our state, similar with Texas, we have a land use program for taxes. So a lot of wealthy people have big tracts of land, and to get a tax break, they keep it in ag or forestry. And we're not going to be able to meet their needs. So how does that affect us, when he gets back? Are we going to still have those, or are we going to lose those contracts? Which is, especially with hay, you're fertilizing it, you're tending it year after year. And that's a financial consideration that can kind of be disappointing. And then this is for my husband now, organize and label everything, get stuff so it's not all spread out. I think spending a day and getting ready for your deployment in an unrushed situation, but using that time to, hoe out your stuff, KonMari it, and get it all organized is super important. And then as far as our farm business part, that's really been a change for us because as you're not able to do something like a farmer's market, if you do CSAs and farmer's market, but you can't repeatedly lift a 75-pound cooler and bring it to the farmer's market, you're going to be losing that source of income. So for a lot of us during deployments with the business stuff, some people make more money while they're deployed and some people are going to make less. And if you're making less, trying to figure out how you're going to manage that is important. And then for us, I do most of our social media stuff now, so that's not a big deal. But if your partner is the one who does that, having access to all of the computer stuff is important. And then we'll touch on a little bit of the size and scale stuff with these folks and have some of their advice. But I know for our farm, it's going to be scaling down. So you guys want to touch on just the size and scale part and how you've managed that?
We moved from, just last year, we owned 10 acres, and we were blessed with buying 70 acres. And we're not scaling down. The only thing I've scaled down is slightly different because even though my husband's gone, I kind of act as the first sergeant, and I just run it. And then I brief the commander when he comes home, and everything is labeled. And really, that saved our marriage a number of years ago when his first sergeant at the time told me to look at our marriage in that capacity and learn how to brief the commander. Once I learned how to brief the commander, it was fantastic. So that's kind of my role, and I'm okay with that. So everything is labeled. We don't scale back. The only thing I did cut back is we do a lot of agritourism, and I do week-long summer camps during the summer. Well, he's only home on Saturday. He comes home at 10, 11 o'clock at night on Friday. He's home all day Saturday, and then he leaves after church on Sunday. So I was doing week-long summer camps Monday through Friday, and then Saturday I run the farmer's market while he's doing the big muscle building, construction, haying stuff on Saturday. So I'd be doing the farmer's market from 4 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. And by the time I get home, I zonk out. And so I went not seeing him at all from May to October. And that was mental health wise, emotional wise. For me, he was with the kids, but I never saw him. So the only thing I have scaled back is I'm not doing my summer camps Monday through Friday. I'm doing my summer camps Tuesday and Thursday because that agritourism piece is a huge thing, but that gives me a little bit more time to be me, to talk with him on the phone, to make sure that my kids are squared away, and then hopefully my 15-year-old gets his license and he can go to the farmer's market this coming year at 4 o'clock in the morning and I can just meet him up. Fingers crossed. We shall see. Otherwise, we're just going to keep plowing through. We've got one more year, and we just want to keep going. So that's how we're working it. We have beef. We usually process, this past year, we processed 24 head of cattle. We're behind. I have a wait list of over a dozen. We just haven't had the product to push it through. So grass-fed, grass-finished beef is what we do. That's what our demographic wants. We do pastured pork, and we only do about 12 head of pork a year. We have 800 chickens for eggs, and we sell in 5 local grocery stores, the farmer's market, and direct sales. And we have done pastured poultry. Our last processing facility shut down, so we did poultry and turkeys. Poultry were a pain in the rear, and I'm so glad they shut down. But we made a lot of money on our turkeys, and so I'm disappointed that because that was a quick turnover. They're a great breed, and we made a lot of money on those. So I'd like to try to re-strategize, not for this year, but after he retires, how we could possibly get back into the turkeys. So, and then the agritourism, over 40% of our income is through my teaching the classes, both to adults and to children, and working with the community. So that's kind of our scale. So
like I mentioned earlier, my role in RB business, it's a little bit different. Both my husband and I, neither one of us is in the military anymore, so we don't have to worry about deployment. but my role is more of kind of as a caretaker for him. And a big part of that is he has goals of scaling up from 800 hives right now. He wants to get to 5,000 in 3 years. And so we're just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we have, for me, helping him with that and coming up with a plan of how are we doing that and actually putting it down on paper. I am an Excel wizard, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, it's been really helpful, but that's the stuff that he hates. I mean, that's the stuff that he would rather poke himself in the eyeball than sit in front of a computer, and which is really good for him because, with his physical disabilities, it's good for him to remember that he's still physically capable to do things. And so I don't mind taking on that role, but in terms of scaling, we are scaling up and up and up. And it's been really challenging because managing 100 hives is a lot different than managing 800 hives. And while he's really good at going out and doing the work, he's not really good at, okay, well, this beehive needs a queen, or this beehive needs this, and getting that information to the other people who work with us, because he can't do it all himself. And so it's been challenging because I'm like, you have to track this in some way. And so a big part of what I do with that is I help him track it via Excel, because I'm apparently an Excel wizard. I don't know. Yeah.
Awesome. That brings up a good point that every farm family is a team. And whenever you're looking at a spouse leaving, you're losing a member of your team, and it's a vital member. So keeping that in the back of your mind, like you're losing a member of your team for a short amount of time, like this is really going to shake some things up. One thing we did on scalability, we've had an intern. We were actually able to get him to the conference this year. He's an Air Force veteran. He's helped us out on the farm since inception. He is a doer. He doesn't like to, if there's an issue, he's calling. He's not going to figure it out. He wants to know what to do. And we were put in a position with some predator issues on our pasture poultry operation, where I just looked at him this year and I'm like, listen, bud, it's time to spread your wings. You need to take these birds and take them down to your place, because I cannot get these raccoons under control. It's time for you to get out on your own. And he basically cut his teeth, saved the season for us while we could get things back under control out at the home farm. And now he's looking at, okay, hey, how many birds are we going to do next year at my place? So it's really developed him into, he's becoming his own veteran farmer rather than just being my sidekick and hanging out and we're drink some beers and do this. Now he started his LLC, and now he's getting into the operation. He raises some pigs now, and now he has some turkeys. He's going to do a market garden with us. So it's been interesting to really see the network, and I honestly got those skills from coming here and hearing other people's stories on the nonprofit side, how they're branching out, reaching out to other veterans that have a similar story. And we're going to scale down a little bit, but it's also branching out into a fully developed tree is how I feel. So that's something to think about if you're concerned about operations on your home farm. If you have that good friend that's interested, or maybe not even interested, but he's a solid friend, reach out to them, because people want to help you. If you're doing good business and have a good operation, you'll be amazed how many people will show up and want to bale hay with you. I couldn't believe the amount of people that wanted to go pick up square bales out of the pasture, and they were begging me to come out, just give me the time and place. I'm like, okay, this is great. So you don't have to bear that burden and do it all on your own. There's people that just want to have exposure on the farm, doing these farm activities, and I'll spare a dozen eggs. They don't want anything. I force eggs in their car before they leave. You got to take something. You're not working for free. So that's something to think about on scaling, potentially, as long as you're moving some way and not stagnant, you're moving forward.
I think that's really good advice. You may not have to necessarily scale down. Branching out, that's really good advice. And so take advantage of being at this conference, because you have a lot of veterans, a lot of farmers, and you know how our communities are. We want to help each other. So take advantage of that while you're here.
And I think for a lot of people, even if you only do it in your own head, is figure out what your response is going to be when you have people in your community that know that your partner's deployed, to figure out how you're going to specifically give them a task to help you with. Because, a lot of people offer help and you're like, oh, it's all right, everything's fine. I think figuring out something specific that you could use a hand with, if you really hate doing laundry and somebody isn't going to be able to use a tractor and, do something in the field, they could still help you with some sort of household thing that could take off some of the burden. So when I went through the planning to try to figure out something ag specific, this was actually one of the best templates I found, and it was for just farm emergency planning. And a lot of the questions when you go through, are very helpful. So whether it's fire, tornado, hurricane, that kind of thing. And I know for us in the Northeast, our biggest sort of issue that can affect us with a natural disaster are ice emergencies. That's what can really block out roads and power. And thinking, if it happens on a 40-degree day and we don't have power for 2 weeks, how the heck am I going to keep, 6 to 8 freezers running and our products safe? So that's a good resource. And I think so. I just wanted to give us time for questions, and so you can ask our great panelists any tips. So if there's anything else you guys want to add as well.
Anybody have any questions about anything?
I've got a random one. And how much of y'all's business comes from like mail order?
Mail order?
Mail.
Do y'all do a lot of that, like shipping across the country, or is it mainly like localized?
Yeah. I don't do any of that at all. We don't do any of that.
Everything we do is local, within a 45-minute radius of where we are.
So our honey and soap products, anything that's shelf stable, we'll send. We've sent meat through the Postal Service before. We're figuring out how these guys. I've been hitting up a lot of these guys to do the Wagyu beef because they're sending that, but no one's going to pay me $50 a chicken. It's what you need to send that stuff. So finding the economical way to send that has been my biggest struggle. But anything shelf stable, it can go in a little envelope sleeve. That's kind of why we looked at any value add product. Like what can I put on the shelf I plan on making inventory of soap while she's gone and have it stacked to the roof. Like, okay, sell this stuff. Yeah. There's guys here that are sending things through the mail. So some of these cattle guys, if you have a question on how they're doing it.
Yeah, we don't really send anything through the mail. So our operations is fully pollination, but my husband got into the bee business not understanding that you have to harvest honey. If you're growing, you have to harvest it. He really just jumped into bees and not knowing a darn thing about it. But he's been doing really well and learning a lot as he goes. So one of the things that we do sell, other than our pollination services, is we have honey, obviously. In fact, we have about 300 gallons in our garage right now that we need a bottle. So, and in terms of shipping, we have friends all over the country that are like, oh, please, ship us your honey, but, honey's heavy. And so we're like, are you going to pay $15 for shipping? We don't want to do that to our friends, but so we don't really have a huge shipping. We don't do a lot of shipping unless people are like, yeah, send me your honey. I don't care how much it costs, which we've had actually a few nonprofit organizations that are like, please, we want your honey. So, yeah, sorry.
We just never have enough inventory. So, yeah, we wanted this year to start a meat CSA for our local area and to deliver it. I just don't have enough inventory. So, we'll put it again maybe for next year. So, yeah.
And I was just going to say for us, right now we don't have a lot of things that we ship, but one thing that I've been working on sort of pre-deployment time is having more digital stuff that you can make money on off of your website and social media. So having PDFs, so whether it's sort of a short e-course, e-cookbooks kind of thing, things like that can sort of become tangible for the buyer, but that don't take really any effort to ship, just because time's going to be so precious during deployment. I don't want to be waiting at the post office, but things that can kind of be automatic, and even if they're not very expensive, it's a good way to have some income, passive income, that can be a simplified.
Could you expand on your agritourism, the classes that you're doing?
Sure. So I teach both adult classes and child classes. The adult classes, I have a master's in nonprofit management, leadership, marketing, so I hone in on those, thanks to the GI Bill. Those are the adult ones. I teach them on our farm and then also at the tech community college. The children's classes and the parent-child classes are on like milking. We have goats, and so milking the goats, making soap, dehorning the goats, things like that. The fun classes are everybody in the spring gets to come out and bottle feed the baby goats. We usually kick off in March. March is our big season. I started a program back in California that we got a grant for in Nebraska and trademarked our Rent-A-Chick program. And so obviously we have 8 children, so obviously I have to homeschool, right? So education is just a part of our life. And so back in California, we saw at Easter time, everybody was buying cute baby chicks and then abandoning them to the humane societies, the side of the roads, and I'm a fixer. And so I'm like, okay, here's a problem. How can we fix that? And so we started, I designed a program to rent out baby chicks to families, photographers, help them learn about chickens, give them the opportunity to have them cute and cuddly, and then give them back to the farm where they can be raised healthy and used. So then we trademarked our program and patented it through a grant. And so we're working with other farmers who want to use that also, but that's kind of our big kickoff and big community event along with the bottle feeding, and all in the spring. So and I just kind of, I just love kids and moms and yeah, I have no friends. We have no army base. So I live off of my customers. So that's my friends. So there's no army family for me. And until we PCS or ETS somewhere, army, I'm in limbo, so. CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. I think the nation kind of has, I don't know, you might have different ideas, but in my opinion, I think this nation doesn't really understand what community, at least in our area, community supported agriculture is. Initially, the idea was people invested into the farm, into the program, tomatoes, beef, whatever. If it was a high yield, a good year, then they got a good return. If something happened, like there was a freeze or bugs or whatnot, then they just understood that there was a less return. In our area, there's a misunderstanding of what that is. So for us, CSA means they're basically getting a butcher box. They're buying a box of meat and they get it every month. Regardless if I have highs or lows, they don't care. They just want their product. So it's kind of a misinformed industry, but it's good extra sales. So I don't know, do you guys have anything?
They pay ahead of time, right?
They do pay us ahead of time, yep. But they do expect, regardless of if something happens, they expect what they paid for, so.
Yeah, it essentially is taking the startup costs on an egg laying operation or your garden or whatever your CSA is going to provide. You basically get your nest egg funding from your customer base, and then upfront to fund your operation, you do the labor, and that's baked into your CSA cost. So you can do, we're looking at a vegetable CSA for $130 for 4 months, which is during the farmer's market season, where they will get these 5 items that are in season. If you want additional, the pickup location is at the farmer's market. You get your box there, and then there's all the one-off oddities these other heirloom tomatoes. If you want these, you can add them to your box, but I'm not. You can get into the customization, which is fine if you have 5 customers. When you look at, I have 100 CSA customers and everyone wants to be different, then it turns into a beast, especially if you're holding down the homestead. It's not something I was interested in.
That's what I was going to say, is that we've done a meat CSA, and it was kind of disastrous. It was something that people always asked for and wanted, and it's like a hip terminology, but it was exactly what Meryl said, was that people expected it to be like butcher block. It wasn't seen as a micro loan, basically. People were not okay with, if one of your pigs died, they did not want to accept a reduction in the amount of bacon they got. So all ours was, and I think this tends to happen now, is people say, oh, I have a meat CSA, but all it really is sort of a prepayment program. And yes, there may be some flexibility in it. So like with ours, you got, 5 pounds of beef, 5 pounds of lamb, 5 pounds of pork or whatever. But what we found, which made it a living nightmare, was you would spend all this time preparing boxes that were equitable, and then someone would say, you know what, I really don't like steak, I want hamburgers. Then they'd grab it out of somebody else's boxes, and it just became a logistical nightmare. So if you want to have pre-curated boxes, I think that's something that can be awesome and can work, but I wouldn't call it a CSA, and I wouldn't necessarily want to ever go down that route. We found it's incredibly difficult to make customers happy with picking out their meat for them. So even if you have some sort of plan where somebody's prepays and they get $40 worth of meat a week, they really want to go and examine each steak, or, that's been really difficult. The whole bulk buying thing, which works for some people in some areas, has not worked for us over the last 15 years of doing meat at all. And I had hoped that would work, but what we found is retail is just much easier. Even among our restaurant friends, we still haven't, they might buy 50 pounds of hamburger, but they're not wanting to get a whole cow. So I think it really depends on your area and your customers.
That totally does, because for us, the reason I don't have inventory to do the CSA is because I'm always sold out of halves and full cows. And so know your demographics, research who you're marketing to and who your clientele is going to be, and really hone in on that. We do sell retail at farmers markets and whatnot, but our customers, we've built up a relationship with them that they just trust us. So no matter what I put in their bag, they don't even look at it. They're just like, if that's what you think is the best, that's what I'm gonna cook. So for us, it'd be easy for all of our customers just to put together a box, and they would trust that. So it just really depends on your area. Everywhere is gonna be different. Any other questions, and it doesn't have to be about deployment, like business startup, or I don't know, anything.
I heard your husband speak in the pasture poultry class, and he talked about the rented chicks.
Was his voice okay?
Yeah. So I got 2 things with the chicks. One, I hate brooding. I hate it so much because you got Coxie, and West Virginia is an animal killing place. Like, it's always wet, or one day it's 80 and sunny, and the next day it's 45 and raining, and it's really hard on the animals and stuff. And so I really love the idea of someone else doing 2 to 3 weeks of taking care of the brooding and putting them in a brooder and all that stuff. But 2, we also get the calls 2 weeks after Easter. My kids lost interest in the duck that their aunt and uncle bought them without asking. For Easter, can you take them and bring them to your farm? We're like, yeah, okay. What's another duck? But you said that your idea is patented and everything. How would somebody go about doing something like that at their farm? You said you
Yeah, just email me on the side, and I'll walk you through the process. So the biggest thing is setting yourself up with insurance, because you're dealing with people who don't know anything about chickens and health care. You realize that baby chicks are very fragile. They do not. Even when we teach them how to hold them, how to sit down on their bottoms, whatnot, it isn't necessarily the children that break the rules, it's the parents that break the rules. And so you have to be firm and confident in how you're speaking to them. You need to let them know that this is a creature that they may kill. You need to have a backup plan so that if a chick comes back to you dead, how are you going to handle it? Because you might have the extreme traumatic parent that thinks the world's going to end, or you might have the one made a homemade little sign, named it, put their date of birth and date of death, and wanted to bury it at my farm. So you just kind of need to go with the flow. And we have it all on our website so that people understand it's life and death. You also get PETA calls. Lots of other things. So you just have to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what your plan of action is, and we help walk you through that. So it has been profitable for us. It has been a benefit for us. But we have 800 chickens. We rotate them through the breeds for the egg laying. And so when we buy them 400 at a time for Easter, that helps. But if you're only doing 20, it might not pay off. The cost for the kits and everything might not pay off. So.
I think for us it's more of we're trying to dip our toe in the water with agritourism because we want it to turn into eventually pick your own pumpkins, strawberries, and hay rides and all kinds of stuff like that. We have a farm in West Virginia in Buffalo called Grits Farm, and they have a corn maze and they have a playground made of hay bales and tube slides, and the slides go down into a big giant thing of corn.
Yeah.
And that place is slammed.
Yeah.
It's only open for like a month and a half or something for that kind of stuff, and people just
They eat it up. They do. Insurance, and then zoning. Where you're located in your county, are you allowed to do that for the regulations? So that business side of it, look into first.
How do you guys handle the biosecurity when you have other people coming onto your place for anything doing agritourism or the rent-a-chick and things like that? How do you handle biosecurity so that they're not bringing in issues?
Yep. So we never, depending on what license that you might have, if you have certain license, you might not be able to adopt chicks or ducks that somebody abandons. We have a closed herd, so we can't take them. But we're very upfront with them and let them know, please don't call us. We've got blurbs on our website and whatnot, so they know not to even ask, because I have a hard time saying no, so don't ask. Biosecurity-wise, we have certain places that they can go and they can't go, depending on what we're running at the time. Washing hands, hand sanitizer, things like that. Yep, is just all the time. It just depends on what your certifications are, what breeds or what herd management practices you have in your area. Luckily for us, we're the only one in our area doing what we do. Everything else is row crop, and so there's not a lot. Yeah. Anybody?
One thing I saw, it's called Vernon Family Farms. I don't know if they're Vermont or New Hampshire, but they're up that way somewhere. They're doing a lot of cool things like you're talking about. It kind of caveats off the rent-a-chick, but they have like a chick day on their farm to get people out there, and they have a retail store which leads to more sales, but they look like they're maybe month old. They get the families out there with the kids around the birds, taking pictures for Instagram. They get their whole bird and they get back in their SUV and they go back to the city. So that's something to think about. That might be a little less labor intensive.
We have
You better be charging.
Charge it out.
Always charge.
Yeah,
Don't do free.
Because we've got, in West Virginia, you know, a lot of places are like mountain, but where we're at, it's more like Virginia where you've got some nice mountains and then you've got some rolling hills in between some space. And that's kind of where hayfield's like, we've got a 20-acre flat hayfield and then you're gonna have that foliage on the mountain behind there. People just love that. And
Yeah.
so we did ours like that, and so everyone was like, oh, okay, out there for the picture.
Yeah, so always charge for everything. One, it helps cover your insurance costs that you should be paying. You should have insurance for anybody that comes on your property. But then also, you build up that reputation of who you are and what your value is. We also barter with a lot of photographers. So like that family picture of ours, she came out and took a ton of photos for free in exchange for, she likes photos of farm animals. That's what she sells at the farmers markets, little magnets and stuff. So we barter for a lot of things. And it would be good if you have an area for wedding photos or whatnot, say, you know, come up with something in exchange. You want to use samples of their photography on your website or whatever it is. But yeah.
That's a good thing to think about too. If you do have to scale down one of the more labor-intensive operations like poultry or cattle or pork, you can go and buy 200 pounds of sunflowers and plant that field that's just hard to farm, row crop, or hard to hay. Just put that out there, set it and forget it, and then put it on Craigslist. Hey, $100 sessions, or hit up your photographer friends or the pumpkins. If the pumpkins don't go, hit up the pig farmer. Come pick all these up. They're yours, and you're out maybe $50 and tons and tons of pumpkins. That's something that we're talking about. The set and forget motto, if you're going to be doing it alone, is where you need to get creative on your farm.
We're lucky this time he's going in winter and he'll be back before, I'll have probably had the first set of broilers for about 2 to 3 weeks by myself. But it's not that bad, besides you have to go out there like every 4 hours to check them. At least it's not turkeys, they're stupid.
All right, well, thank you guys so much, and feel free to talk to us anytime. I'll be here throughout the conference, and follow us online on our websites or Instagram or Facebook, and be in touch if you have any question. And I think we're all available. If you are gearing it for deployment and you need anything, I'm only a message away, and would love to help you in whatever capacity I can. So, and I really appreciate our panelists. So I'll give them a round of applause, and thank you guys so much for coming out and sharing your story. So I really appreciate it. Thank you guys.